In a silent marble boardroom high above Manhattan, a dozen executives held their breath as the billionaire lifted his pen to sign the deal that would change everything. Cameras flashed. Lawyers smiled. It was supposed to be a historic moment. But just as the pen touched paper, a woman's trembling voice broke through the silence. "Don't sign that," she whispered. Every head turned. The billionaire froze, eyes narrowing in disbelief. Who were the Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the kind of view people killed for, or signed their souls away to get. At the top of Miles Tower, one of the tallest buildings in New York, the 83rd floor boardroom pulsed with quiet tension. 12 men in designer suits sat around an obsidian glass table that looked sharp enough to cut diamonds. The air smelled faintly of cologne and ambition. At the head of the table sat Ethan Cole, billionaire, venture tycoon, and founder of Cole Dynamics, the man whose decisions could shift markets overnight. Today, his signature was about to finalize the largest corporate merger in U.S. history, a $60 billion deal with Viridian Tech, a global AI defense contractor. It was supposed to be the crowning achievement of his empire, but the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The room before the storm, Ethan's golden fountain pen gleamed on the table before him. Across from him, Lucas Verrick, CEO of Viridian, flashed a rehearsed smile, the kind of smile you learn after years of selling dangerous dreams as innovation. The legal teams whispered, flipping through endless pages of contracts. News outlets outside were waiting, cameras poised. The headlines were already written. Cole and Viridian merge, the future of global defense. But inside, no one dared to speak unless spoken to. Everyone knew Ethan Cole's temper. It was calm until it wasn't, and when it broke, it left careers scattered like glass. The only sound in the room was the low hum of air conditioning and the rhythmic tap of a pen between Ethan's fingers. The woman in the corner, she didn't belong there. Not really. Her name was Elena Brooks, a junior assistant from the compliance department, the kind of position invisible to men like Ethan and Lucas. She stood near the wall, clutching a folder to her chest, heart hammering. She'd been sent there by accident. A scheduling mix-up, nothing more. Her supervisor had been sick that morning, and someone needed to deliver the final audit folder before the signing. Just stand in the back and keep quiet, they'd told her. But the moment she walked in, she felt something was wrong. The numbers she'd reviewed the night before, the encrypted financial records from Viridian's offshore accounts, had one detail that didn't fit. A missing fund, a transaction buried deep enough that it was never meant to be found. At first, she thought it was a mistake. But the deeper she looked, the clearer it became. Viridian wasn't merging for growth. They were covering up something monstrous, the calm before his signature. "All right," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was smooth but heavy, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Are we ready to finalize this?" "Yes, Mr. Cole," his CFO replied, sliding the final agreement across the table. "All documents are cleared and verified. Once you sign, we'll execute immediately." Ethan glanced at the pages, the corners of his mouth tightening. He'd spent a decade building Cole Dynamics from the ground up, a symbol of precision, integrity, and innovation. But even titans get tired. This merger would mean stepping away from the daily grind, billions more in his pocket, and an exit from constant scrutiny. He leaned back slightly, scanning the line where his signature would go. The cameras outside the glass doors were ready. The PR director whispered into a headset, timing every move. In seconds, Ethan would sign. And Elena knew, once that ink hit paper, it would be too late. Her heartbeat and the truth, Elena's hands were slick with sweat. She had gone over the data 100 times before walking in. The file she held contained encrypted emails between Viridian's financial director and a private logistics firm in Eastern Europe. They weren't transferring assets. They were laundering something tied to Project Helix, a rumored AI weapon system that had been banned under international law. If Ethan signed, his company would legally inherit every part of that operation, including the liability. She looked up. Ethan's pen hovered over the page. The camera's red recording lights blinked through the glass wall. Everyone's eyes were on him. No one noticed her. Her mind screamed, Say something, now. But how do you interrupt a billionaire surrounded by power and silence? She took a step forward, then another. The sound of her heels echoed faintly, soft, almost apologetic, until she was close enough to see the reflection of the skyline in his pen. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Don't sign that." The whisper that stopped time, the pen froze midair. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. Ethan's eyes lifted, sharp as steel. He turned his head slightly toward the voice, confused at first, then narrowing in recognition as he found the trembling woman at the far end of the room. "What did you just say?" His voice was calm, but the air shifted. Elena swallowed. "Sir, the merger. It's not what it looks like." Murmurs rippled across the table. Lucas Varick frowned, exchanging glances with his team. Ethan leaned back slowly, his eyes still locked on her. "Explain yourself." Her throat felt tight, but she forced the words out. "There's an unreported transaction in Viridian's ledgers, offshore. It connects to a program under international investigation. If you sign that agreement, Coal Dynamics becomes legally responsible." The room erupted. "What nonsense is this?" Lucas snapped. "She's not authorized to be here." Another executive barked, but Ethan raised a hand. The noise stopped instantly. His gaze didn't waver. "Show me." The reveal Elena stepped forward, pulling a flash drive from the folder. Her hands trembled as she connected it to the conference display. Lines of code and numbers flickered across the screen, encrypted financial routes, timestamps, wire transfers. Then a name appeared, Project Helix. The silence turned suffocating. Ethan's expression didn't change, but the vein in his jaw tightened. He turned slowly toward Lucas Varick, whose confident smile was gone. "Is this true?" Lucas forced a laugh. "Of course not. This is irrelevant data from a discontinued project." "She's mistaken," Elena shook her head. "The funds were moved 3 weeks ago, not discontinued. They were redirected." Ethan's pen rolled off the table and hit the floor with a soft click. The shift in power. The executives looked at one another nervously. Ethan stood, moving with calm precision, the kind that came right before a storm. "Lucas," he said, voice low, "I trusted your company. You told me this merger was clean." Lucas opened his mouth, but no words came. Ethan glanced at his lawyer. "Shut down the signing, now." The legal team scrambled, pulling papers back into folders. Reporters outside pressed against the glass. Confused by the sudden commotion, Elena stood frozen, half expecting to be escorted out or fired on the spot. Instead, Ethan turned toward her. "What department did you say you were from?" "Compliance, sir," she managed. He studied her for a moment, expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "Remind me to give your supervisor a raise." Fallout and Motion Security escorted the Viridian team out within minutes. Phones rang, lawyers whispered urgently, and the boardroom, once tense and still, now buzzed with controlled chaos. Outside, cameras were flashing as news broke. Coal Viridian signing halted mid-event. Rumors of internal leak. Ethan's team gathered around him. "Uncertain, sir. Should we release a statement?" one asked. "Not yet," Ethan said, still watching Elena, who stood by the corner like a ghost who accidentally changed history. She looked terrified. And for good reason. She had just derailed a $60 billion deal. He walked toward her. "Miss Brooks, was it?" "Yes, sir. You just stopped the biggest transaction of my career." Her stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, sir. He cut her off with a faint smile. "Don't apologize. You might have just saved it," the whisper echoes. When the room finally cleared, Ethan remained by the window. The city sprawled beneath him. He could hear his advisors murmuring about stock fluctuations and press fallout. But his mind was elsewhere, that whisper. "Don't sign that." It replayed in his head like an alarm bell that came at exactly the right second. He'd built his empire on instinct, but he'd nearly lost it by trusting numbers that looked too perfect. He turned to his assistant. "Find out everything about Project Helix. I want every document, every link, every person who touched it. Yes, Mr. Cole. And keep Miss Brooks on the team," he added, glancing briefly toward Elena. "From now on, I want her in every audit meeting. Elena blinked, stunned. "Sir, you saw what my entire team missed," he said, his tone softer now. "That makes you more valuable than any signature." End of setup transition by evening. The headlines had shifted again. Cole halts historic merger after last-minute discovery. Internal source prevents catastrophe. Ethan sat alone in his office, watching the news play across the glass wall of screens. Behind the image of power, though, a question lingered. If Viridian was hiding Project Helix, what exactly had he almost signed his name to? He didn't know yet, but one thing was certain. That whisper wasn't just a was she. This quiet assistant standing in the corner, defying the room. Her words sent a chill across the table, and within seconds, the confident smiles turned to panic. Because what she knew could destroy every man sitting there, and end a billion-dollar empire before the ink even dried. The city didn't sleep that night. Neither did Ethan Cole. From his glass-walled office, the skyline pulsed with light. Blinking towers, midnight traffic, and the constant whisper of a city that thrived on secrets. He stood before the wall of screens, watching the news coverage loop again and again. Cole Viridian deal halted. Unconfirmed whistleblower saves Cole Dynamics from possible scandal. Every headline carried the same undertone. Power trembled today. But beneath the noise, Ethan's instincts told him something else. This wasn't over. The first clue by morning, the PR chaos had cooled. Investors were reassured, statements released, and Viridian's lawyers had gone silent, a bad sign. Elena Brooks sat nervously in a smaller office down the hall, surrounded by boxes of legal files and audit folders. Her desk still had the temporary label, Assistant, Compliance. But when the glass doors opened, it wasn't her supervisor who walked in, it was Ethan Cole himself. He wore a charcoal suit and a look that could cut steel. "You're coming with me," he said simply. "Sir?" He nodded toward the files. "You found the first thread. Let's see what else unravels." Within an hour, they were in Ethan's private research suite, a sleek, soundproof room few employees even knew existed. Ethan gestured toward a series of encrypted servers. Every digital file Viridian shared during merger talks is mirrored here. "Find me what they tried to hide," Elena hesitated. "Sir, if we access proprietary data after the merger collapsed, it could—" He interrupted quietly. "They tried to bury me. If they were clean, they wouldn't care." The trail of silence, they worked for hours, combing through invoices, contractor lists, shell companies. Ethan's mind was sharp, calculating. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, decoding patterns only a true analyst could spot. Then she froze. One name appeared again and again under different aliases. Helix Logistics. Registered to untraceable subsidiaries in 3 countries. And next to each record, a shipping manifest labeled Neural Core Components. "What is this?" she whispered. Ethan leaned in. "AI core components." "But routed through military suppliers? That's illegal without government clearance." She clicked another file. The screen flickered, then went black. "Wait," she murmured, tapping keys. "The server's blocking me." Lines of red code scrolled across the display. Access revoked. Session terminated. Someone was cutting them off. In real time. Ethan straightened, his jaw tight. "Disconnect the system." She yanked the cable. The lights dimmed for half a second. "Sir," she said slowly, "that means someone's still watching this network." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Then we know we're onto something." The man in the gray car by late evening, Ethan had assigned his trusted head of security, Marcus Vale, to trace the IP breach. When Marcus returned, his expression was grave. "The intrusion originated from a Viridian-owned relay," he said. "But here's the problem. They had access before we did. They've been inside our system for weeks." Ethan's eyes darkened. "So they were watching the entire merger negotiation," Marcus nodded. "And now they know what you and the girl found." Outside the building, a gray sedan idled too long near the loading dock. Cameras picked it up twice that night. The plates traced back to a private intelligence firm, one contracted by Viridian for asset protection. Ethan stared at the footage. "They're not protecting assets," he said quietly. "They're protecting secrets. That night, Elena's apartment buzzer went off at 1:14 a.m. She peeked through the peephole. Ethan Cole stood there, still in his suit, rain streaking his shoulders. "I couldn't risk a call," he said when she opened the door. "We have a problem." She blinked, startled. "You came here?" "They're watching both our offices," he replied flatly. "We'll talk inside." He placed a slim, encrypted tablet on her table. "This is an offline copy of the Viridian files we pulled before the server shut down. It's the only version left," she hesitated. "If they find out we have this, they already know," he said. "That's why we can't stop now." He scrolled through the documents, shipment coordinates, financial trails, coded communications. At the bottom of one file was a note: Phase 2 deployment, Eastern Division, Q1 initiation. Elena frowned. "Deployment of what?" Ethan's tone was grim. "If my guess is right, autonomous weapons. The kind the UN banned years ago," a beat of silence. The weight of it settled in the air like smoke. Then from outside, a faint click. A car door. Then another. Ethan's head snapped toward the window. Two men in dark coats stood near a black SUV, pretending to smoke. Elena's pulse raced. "Are they—" "Yes," he said quietly. "Pack the tablet." "We're leaving." They exited through the back stairwell, moving fast. Rain slicked the pavement, reflecting neon streaks of red and blue. As they crossed the street toward Ethan's waiting car, a black SUV's engine roared to life. "Go!" he ordered. The driver, Marcus, gunned the accelerator. The SUV followed, headlights slicing through the mist. Ethan grabbed his phone, voice steady despite the chase. "Activate drone relay." "I want eyes behind us." Marcus flipped a switch on the dash. A small reconnaissance drone launched from the car's rear compartment, soaring into the night. On the tablet, a live feed showed their pursuers closing in. "They're not random," Ethan muttered. "That's tactical formation." Elena gripped the seat. "They're military?" "Worse," he said. "Corporate security with no rules." Marcus swerved onto the bridge, tires screeching. The drone feed flickered, then cut to static. "Signal jammed," Elena cried. Ethan's jaw clenched. "They're prepared for every countermeasure." Then, a blinding light flooded the road ahead. A third SUV blocked their path. Marcus spun the wheel, narrowly avoiding collision as the car slammed into a barricade. Airbags exploded. Smoke filled the cabin. "Move!" Ethan shouted, dragging Elena out through the side door. They sprinted toward the shadows beneath the bridge as footsteps echoed behind them. Hours later, they sat in a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of Queens. Marcus had driven them there in a decoy vehicle after losing their tail. Ethan's pristine suit was torn at the shoulder. Elena's hand still shook. He poured her a glass of water. "You still have the tablet?" She nodded, clutching it tight. He exhaled. "Good, because whatever's on it, Viridian's willing to kill for it." Marcus pulled out a small box and placed it on the table. Inside were burner phones, fake IDs, and encrypted USB drives. Ethan gave him a look. "You've done this before," Marcus smirked. "You don't build an empire without stepping on the wrong toes, boss." Elena stared at them both. "What now? We go to the FBI?" Ethan shook his head. "Viridian's got friends there. We need proof strong enough that even they can't bury it." He tapped the tablet. "Project Helix. It's more than a legal AI. It's a network. If we trace who approved these payments, we'll find the core of it." By dawn, they cracked the final layer of encryption. Elena's eyes widened at the result. A list of names, politicians, defense officials. Even a few private investors tied to Coal Dynamics' own board. Her voice trembled. "Your company?" "They're in it too." Ethan stared at the screen, silent. There it was. Proof that the corruption wasn't just Viridian. It was homegrown. He sank into a chair. "So that's why they wanted the merger." "It wasn't a partnership. It was containment. They wanted to absorb us before we found this." A loud buzz echoed through the warehouse. Marcus checked the monitor, a motion sensor near the alley door. He cursed. "They found us." Ethan grabbed the tablet and shoved it into a lead-lined briefcase. "Backup route, now." They slipped through the warehouse's rear exit into the gray morning light. A convoy of black SUVs rolled up silently, blocking both ends of the street. Lucas Varick stepped out of the middle vehicle, flanked by two men in dark suits. "Ethan," he called, his tone calm but venomous. "You've made this far messier than it needed to be." Ethan didn't move. "You sent people after us," Lucas smiled thinly. "You took something that doesn't belong to you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You mean evidence of your crimes?" Lucas chuckled. "You think you're exposing corruption? You're part of it. Every company that touches defense tech is. You just forgot your place," he gestured subtly. One of the men raised a gun. Elena gasped, stepping back. Marcus drew his own weapon, aiming steady. "Walk away, Lucas," Ethan warned. "You can't silence this anymore." Lucas's smile faltered for the first time. "Maybe not you, but her?" Elena froze as the gun turned toward her. In one motion, Marcus fired first. The shot cracked the air, echoing off the concrete. Lucas ducked behind the SUV as chaos erupted, smoke, shouting, and the screech of tires. Marcus grabbed Elena, shoving her toward the alley. "Go! Go now!" Ethan followed, clutching the briefcase. They ran through a maze of back streets until they reached a service tunnel leading into the subway system. The roar of passing trains drowned out the sound of pursuit. Finally, they stopped, breathless. Elena leaned against the wall. "This is insane. You're a billionaire. You're supposed to have lawyers, not shootouts." Ethan's voice was calm but fierce. "When money fails, survival is the only language left." She looked at him, the composed, commanding man from the boardroom, now bruised and breathing hard, yet still impossibly in control. "What happens now?" she asked. He glanced down at the briefcase. "Now? We find the one person who can take this public before they erase it." Later that night, in a safe hotel room under assumed names, Ethan opened the briefcase again. Inside the tablet, one file remained unopened, labeled Core Authorization Project Helix. He clicked it. A single face appeared on screen, grainy but unmistakable. Elena's breath caught. That's your chairman. From your own board." Ethan's eyes hardened. "My mentor," he said quietly. "The man who helped me build this company." He sat back, realization washing over him. "This wasn't just about Viridian's crimes," he said. "It was about keeping me from seeing his." Elena swallowed. "Then what will you do?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "Finish what we started. End of Rising Action transition the next morning." A breaking news alert blared across major networks. Coal Dynamics CEO missing. Viridian denies involvement. In a dim room somewhere in the city, Ethan and Elena watched the screen in silence. The war had just begun, and now, the people hunting them weren't just after secrets. They were after silence itself. The rain hadn't stopped in 2 days. Outside the safe house, thunder rolled across the skyline, echoing the chaos brewing inside Ethan Cole's mind. He stood at the window, the city lights distorted through glass streaked with water. The world he once owned, the empire he built with confidence and control, now hunted him like a criminal. Behind him, Elena sat at the table, scrolling through the final encrypted documents. Her eyes were tired but sharp. She looked up. "It's all here," she said quietly. "Every transaction, every hidden deal, every signature." Ethan turned, his reflection ghosted in the window. "How bad?" Her voice trembled. "Bad enough to destroy Viridian. And you." He crossed the room slowly, the weight of his steps heavy. "Show me." On the screen, a single folder opened. Project Helix, Master Ledger. Every payment authorization carried one signature at the bottom. "Ethan Cole." He froze. "No, that's not possible." Elena's face softened. "They used your digital ID. Someone in your board duplicated your signature to approve the illegal transfers." Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "They made me the scapegoat," she nodded. "And once they release this to the press, you'll be finished before you can even defend yourself." He exhaled shakily, rubbing his temples. "Then we go public first." The broadcast plan, they didn't have time for courts or reporters who could be bought. So Elena proposed something riskier and final. "There's a live financial summit tomorrow," she said. "Every CEO, government liaison, and investor is attending. Viridian's chairman will be there to announce their renewed merger proposal." Ethan looked up. "And?" She slid the tablet across the table. "We upload the files to the summit's live broadcast feed." Everyone watching around the world will see it. Unedited, unfiltered. Ethan stared at her, half in disbelief, half in awe. You're suggesting we hijack a global broadcast from inside the event? She met his gaze. You wanted truth, right? This is how it spreads, he smiled faintly. You're braver than I gave you credit for, she smiled back. No, I'm just tired of men like them deciding who gets to tell the story, or the return. The next morning, Manhattan was slick with rain and tension. Security swarmed the glass towers near the Hudson where the summit was held. Reporters filled the marble lobby. Cameras flashed as black cars rolled in. Among the crowd, two figures in dark coats moved quietly through the entrance. No one looked twice. Just another pair of attendees, badges flashing corporate logos. Elena's voice was calm in his earpiece. Server room's in the basement. 15 minutes until live feed starts. Ethan adjusted his tie. Copy that. I'll handle the distraction. He stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. As the doors closed, his reflection stared back. The polished billionaire mask he'd worn for years. But this time, it felt like armor, not vanity. The chairman's smile upstairs. The ballroom gleamed with crystal chandeliers and golden light. Executives murmured over champagne, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. At the center of it all stood Richard Hensley, chairman of Coal Dynamics, Ethan's former mentor, the man who'd built him up and now betrayed him. When their eyes met, Richard's smile didn't falter. Well, he said smoothly, the prodigal son returns. I was wondering when you'd crawl out of hiding. Ethan's expression was unreadable. You stole my name, Richard. My company. My integrity, Richard chuckled. Integrity is a luxury the powerful can't afford, Ethan. You taught me that once, remember? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Walk away. You're already a ghost in this industry. Don't make it official. Ethan's gaze was ice. You taught me something else, too. Ghosts can haunt the living. Then his earpiece crackled. Elena, we're in position. Uploading in 60 seconds. Ethan gave a slight nod and turned toward the stage. The countdown below, Elena sat in front of a server rack, fingers flying across the keyboard. Her heart hammered as code scrolled rapidly down the screen. 30 seconds. 25. 20. Marcus's voice came through softly over comms. Security's on the move. They know someone's accessing restricted bandwidth. Elena didn't stop. We're almost there. Just need the uplink, then click. The door to the server room opened. 2 guards entered, weapons drawn. Step away from the console, one ordered. Elena raised her hand slowly, buying time. Listen, I can explain. Marcus appeared from behind a stack of crates and struck first, disarming one, tackling the other. The console beeped as the upload reached 100%. Elena slammed the execute key. Reload complete. Live feed overridden. The exposure upstairs, just as the host began to introduce Richard Hensley, the giant LED screens behind the stage flickered. Then, the summit's live feed was hijacked. Static gave way to a series of documents, invoices, signatures, offshore accounts, all tied to Viridian and Coal Dynamics executives. Murmurs spread through the hall. Phones lifted, cameras focused, and then Ethan's voice came over the speakers, calm, deliberate. You wanted to hear about innovation, he said. Let's talk about the price of it. Every head turned as Ethan stepped onto the stage. For years, you've applauded our companies for pushing boundaries. But behind those headlines are deals written in blood, not ink. Autonomous weapons, illegal trades, lives treated as numbers. Security rushed forward, but Richard raised a hand, still pretending control. Don't be dramatic, Ethan. You're only embarrassing yourself. Ethan turned toward him. You framed me. You used my name to build your empire of deceit. Richard's smile faded as the screen shifted again, showing internal memos, one signed personally by him. The audience gasped. A dozen cameras live-streamed his expression across the world. You wanted to silence the truth, Ethan continued. But today, the truth speaks for itself. The fall chaos erupted. Security swarmed, reporters shouted, investors scrambled for exits. Ethan stood unmoved in the center of it all, calm amid the storm. Richard lunged forward, seething. You think this redeems you? Ethan's voice was low. It redeems the people you used. That's enough, Richard's face twisted. You'll go to prison for this! Ethan almost smiled. Maybe, but I'll go there clean. Then, as agents from the Justice Department entered the hall, alerted by the live broadcast, Richard's composure cracked completely. He tried to flee, but the cameras followed. His legacy ended right there, under the lights he once commanded. The goodbye hours later, after the authorities swarmed the summit, Ethan and Elena slipped away through a service corridor. Helicopters thundered overhead. News crews shouting outside. They stopped by a loading dock, both exhausted. Both changed. Ethan looked at her, the woman who had risked everything just to whisper one warning. You didn't have to stay, he said quietly. You could have walked away when it got dangerous. Elena smiled softly. And let them win? Not my style. He chuckled, a weary, honest sound. Then he handed her the encrypted briefcase. You keep this. If anything happens to me, you make sure they never bury it again. Her eyes widened. Ethan, you're not... He stepped back as sirens approached. I have to face what I signed even if I didn't know it. Elena, he said, voice steady. Thank you. For making me listen. Before she could respond, he turned and walked toward the flashing lights at the end of the alley. The aftermath weeks later, the world knew everything. Viridian's executives were indicted, Coal Dynamics board dissolved, and Project Helix dismantled. News anchors called Ethan a fallen titan, others a reluctant hero. But Elena knew the truth. He had chosen integrity over immortality. She stood at the waterfront, the wind cold and sharp, holding the same tablet they'd risked everything to save. A voice behind her made her turn. Marcus, they're offering him a deal, he said. Reduced sentence if he testifies, Elena nodded. He'll take it. Not because he wants freedom, but because he wants it finished. She looked back at the skyline, brighter now, somehow cleaner. Under her breath, she whispered, You did it. Ethan, you really did it. And final scene, inside a federal holding cell. Ethan Cole sat by the window as sunlight poured through the bars. A guard approached. You've got mail, Mr. Cole. He opened the envelope. Inside was a photo, the boardroom from that first day, and scribbled in Elena's handwriting. Don't sign that. E. He smiled faintly, setting it on the table. As the camera pulled back, the city stretched out in golden light, reborn, rebuilt on the ashes of greed and silence. For the first time, Ethan looked peaceful. He had lost everything and found something far greater. The news broke across every continent before dawn. Screens flickered in airports, offices, and homes, from New York to Nairobi, London to Lagos. Coal Dynamics CEO exposes multinational defense conspiracy. Project Helix, the billion-dollar secret that could have changed warfare. Corporate giants crumble as whistleblower. Evidence floods the web. Clips of Ethan Cole's speech replayed in endless loops. Innovation means nothing if built on silence. His voice, calm and steady, became the sound of accountability. The man once hailed as a symbol of power was now a symbol of conscience. Governments held emergency meetings. Tech regulators drafted new laws overnight. For the first time in decades, corporations that had operated in shadows were dragged into daylight. Ethan's arrest footage, him walking calmly toward flashing sirens, became iconic. Not as defeat, but as defiance. Elena's mission, in a quiet corner of Brooklyn, Elena Brooks sat in a small office lit by the glow of computer screens. The sign above the door read, The Helix Foundation, Truth Has No Owner. What began as two people uncovering lies had now become a global movement. Elena ran the foundation full-time, funded by whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and ethical investors. She leaned over a laptop, watching a live feed from Geneva, a United Nations hearing on digital ethics. On the panel, representatives cited Ethan Cole's name more than once. Cole's confession catalyzed the International AI Regulation Charter, one speaker said. He exposed how unchecked innovation can destroy more than it creates. Elena smiled faintly. He'd hate all this praise, she murmured. Her assistant looked up. You think he's watching? Elena's eyes softened. If he is, I hope he knows it mattered. The collapse of Viridian Industries, once untouchable, became the symbol of downfall. Executives turned on each other, indictments stacked higher than their skyscrapers. News anchors described it as the fastest corporate implosion in history. A montage of footage played across networks. FBI raids on glass towers. Employees shredding files. Former board members escorted in handcuffs. And over it all, a chilling truth echoed. They'd have gotten away with it if not for one whispered warning. Stock markets wavered, but public trust soared. For once, ordinary citizens believed that the rich could fall and that truth could rise. Inside the cell in a federal facility overlooking the river, Ethan Cole lived simply. His cell was sparse: a desk, a few books, a small window that caught the sunrise. Reporters begged for interviews. Senators wrote him letters. Activists called him a hero. He replied to none of them. Only one visitor ever came regularly: Elena. She entered the visiting room one rainy morning, carrying a file of foundation updates. He looked up, a faint smile touching his face. "You've been busy," he said. She shrugged. "Somebody has to clean up your mess," he chuckled softly. "You're doing more than cleaning. You're rebuilding." She slid a photograph across the table. A group of young engineers at the Foundation's new ethics lab. "They're developing transparent AI," she said. "Open source, fully traceable, and free for the public." Ethan studied the picture for a long time. "You're creating what we should have been all along." Elena met his gaze. "You started it," he shook his head gently. "No, you did. When you whispered, 'Don't sign that.'" For a long moment, silence hung between them, the kind that carries peace, not guilt. The world shifts months passed. The ripple effect spread faster than anyone predicted. Governments across Europe passed the Helix Act, banning secret defense algorithms. Asian tech firms voluntarily opened their data to third-party audits. In Africa, small startups used the Foundation's models to build transparent innovation systems that benefited local communities. Documentaries called it the Cole Effect. Protesters carried signs with his quote, "The future doesn't belong to those who build it fastest. It belongs to those who build it right." In classrooms, students studied the Cole-Viridian scandal as a turning point in ethics. And every year, the Helix Foundation awarded the Ethan Cole Integrity Grant to a young innovator who stood up to corruption. The attempt to rewrite history, of course, not everyone celebrated. Some called Ethan a traitor. Others said he had destroyed thousands of jobs and tanked economies. But truth doesn't die easily. When a major network aired a re-examination documentary trying to soften Viridian's crimes, Elena countered, releasing the unedited evidence files again, in full for public access. Millions downloaded them overnight. The servers crashed. It was the digital equivalent of a candlelight vigil. Humanity refusing to forget. And through it all, Elena's message stayed the same. Transparency isn't about destroying power. It's about earning it. Ethan's letter one autumn morning, as golden leaves brushed against the prison gates, Ethan sat by his window and wrote a letter. "Elena, if you're reading this, I want you to remember something we both learned too late. Truth doesn't need to win. It just needs to survive. The world we lived in fed on silence, and we gave it noise. That's enough. When I walk out of here, I don't want a company or a title. I just want to see a city that believes again. You once asked me why I listened to you that day. It wasn't courage. It was recognition. I saw in you what I'd forgotten in myself, fear, and the will to act anyway. That's what saves us, Elena." He folded the letter carefully, knowing she'd never receive it by mail, but that somehow she already knew every word. The release 3 years later. On a crisp spring morning, Ethan Cole was released quietly, away from cameras and reporters. He walked out of the gates in a simple coat, carrying nothing but a book and a folded piece of paper, the note Elena once gave him. "Don't sign that." The world outside had changed. Cole Dynamics no longer existed. In its place stood the Helix Institute, a nonprofit think tank for ethical technology. As he stepped onto the street, a car pulled up. Elena leaned out of the window, smiling. "Need a ride?" He hesitated. then smiled back. You still drive like a fugitive? She laughed, only when the world's watching. They drove through the city in silence. New billboards displayed clean energy tech, community-run labs, startups named after ideals instead of profits. Ethan watched the skyline, familiar yet reborn. Looks different, he said softly. Elena nodded. It's not perfect, but it's awake. Chime. Legacy months later, at the first Global Ethics Summit, Elena took the stage as keynote speaker. Cameras broadcasted her words to billions. When we talk about change, we forget it never starts with power. It starts with conscience, with one person saying no. A photo of Ethan appeared behind her, not as a fallen billionaire, but as a man standing in the rain, walking toward justice. He taught us that transparency isn't rebellion. It's evolution. The audience stood in silence, some wiping tears, some clapping softly. The moment was both eulogy and promise. Final scene. That night, in his small apartment overlooking the river, Ethan sat alone with the city's lights reflecting off the glass. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about losses, only beginnings. On his desk lay the prototype of a new project, an open-source platform allowing whistleblowers to safely upload documents to the public, protected by blockchain encryption. He titled it, The Whisper Network. At the bottom of the screen, he typed a tagline. Because truth should never need permission. He leaned back, watching the program run, the hum of servers echoing softly. Outside, lightning flashed. Not as a threat this time, but as illumination. Ethan smiled faintly. Let them watch, he murmured. We're still building. The camera pulled back slowly, city skyline aglow, the river reflecting dawn's first light. Text faded in, inspired by true courage. Dedicated to those who whisper truth in rooms built on lies.